In this video, we're going to discuss template files. First of all, why would one use a template file instead of a theme function? Now, we've covered this pretty extensively in some previous videos, but let me make a few points before we get into how to actually use a template file. First of all, one reason we might end up using a template file instead of a theme function is because the original theming occurs inside of a template file. And that means that overriding it is a lot easier if we also use a template file. A lot of times the developer, either for Drupal core or for a contributed module, uses a template file for a specific reason. And one of those is that it separates out the logic into preprocessing functions typically, and makes the actual themable output an HTML file with minimal PHP code inside of it. That means that when a themer needs to go and modify how a node looks, they simply open up the node.tpl.php file, and all there is a bunch of HTML and some minimal PHP inside of it. Take this in contrast to opening up the template.php file, which may have a dozen or more functions inside of it, and a themer then has to distinguish between the parts that they're going to work with and the parts that they can simply ignore. Finally, one benefit to using template files if you have a choice to use a template file or a theme function is that it's easier to see at a glance what's being overridden at the theme layer. If we want to figure out what theme functions are being overridden, we have to open up template.php. However, if we're looking at simply the template files that are being overridden, we can easily see, just looking at the file structure of the theme, which template files are being overridden specifically, because they'll just be listed there. Let's go ahead and begin by creating a template file override for a node. First of all, I'm going to jump to my resource pack directory and go ahead and copy the bat overrides folder in its entirety, and then go to your Drupal site directory and paste it inside of the sites all themes directory. This folder is a theme that we're going to use as a basis for our examples in this chapter, and it contains a subtheme. If you expand the folder, you'll see that it contains a .info file, a logo file, and a template folder, as well as a steps folder. Now this is a subtheme of the Bartik base theme, and so it just has the minimal requirements for a subtheme. We're going to begin by overriding the node template file because this is one of the most common ones that needs to be overridden. Because this is a Bartik subtheme, we can go ahead and copy the node.tpl.php file from Bartik directly. So go ahead and expand your themes directory that's in your base directory for your Drupal site. Expand Bartik. Scroll down and go ahead and expand the templates directory. And we're going to go ahead and copy the node.tpl.php file. And then go ahead and paste it in the templates directory in bat overrides. Okay, now in order to make sure that we know that our node.tpl.php file is being registered, we can do a couple of things. One, we can enable the theme developer module, download the contributed module, and then enable it in order to see where our node template file resides. Or we can simply change some of the output inside of the node.tpl.php file to determine when our template file is being used. So go ahead and open up the node.tpl.php file. And what I'm going to do is just select the entire content, and I'm just going to put a few random letters inside of this. I'm going to jump back to the browser. And let's go ahead and enable our theme. Go ahead and click on the appearance link. And then at the bottom of this page, there will be a new disabled theme called Build a Theme Override Examples. And we're just going to go ahead and enable and set default. And go ahead and jump to the home page. And we'll see that instead of displaying a list of nodes on our home page, we're seeing a bunch of random letters. And if we use the theme developer module, I'm just going to click this checkbox in the lower left-hand corner, and we hover over one of these items, we'll see that this is using a template in our sites all themes bat overrides templates directory called node.tpl.php, and that's the one that we were just modifying. So if we jump back to our editor and we undo our intentional overriding of the output here and save it, and jump back to our browser, we can refresh the page and see what our nodes would look like using this node.tpl.php file in its base form. At this point, we can then modify the template however we'd like. Now, a lot of times we'll want to modify the node template based on certain criteria. For example, we want the node template file to be overridden for only a certain content type. And this brings us to the idea of template suggestions. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to create a template suggestion for the article node content type. And then we'll talk about that structure a little bit and look at a couple of other examples. Go ahead and jump to your theme directory, your bat overrides theme directory here. And we're going to change the name of node.tpl.php to node-article.tpl.php. Now this is a new suggestion that will target simply the content type called article and none of the other ones. Let's go ahead and open this up. It will be a new file for us. And let's do the same trick that we did earlier and just put in some random content for this node. Go ahead and jump back to your browser. And if you refresh the page at this point, you'll see some differences with our nodes. For example, there's no title here. This is because the theme registry is currently pointing to a node.tpl.php file that doesn't exist in our theme directory anymore. So we need to clear our cache and rebuild the theme registry. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by hovering over home and flush all caches. And when it reloads, we'll see here in our list on the home page that we have some nodes that are being themed in a way that seems normal. And then we have ones that are being themed with our random letters. And this is one way that we can identify which nodes are articles and which ones are the other content types. You see a string of letters here indicating that there's probably multiple nodes here. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll up. And I'm going to enable the theme developer module again here by clicking the checkbox in the lower left-hand corner. And I'm going to click on this node, for example. And I'm going to step up in our box here and see what the node template being used here is. And this is in the themes Bartik templates node.tpl.php file. So this is in the base theme. But if we go ahead and click one of the ones that has random letters, we'll see that this is using a template here at sites all themes bat overrides templates node-article.tpl.php. So we have successfully overridden templates for this particular node type. So this begs the question, how do we apply template files to specific conditions for nodes, for pages, for comments, for anything that uses a template file? Well, to begin, there are a limited set of conditions that we can trigger based on the name that we use for a template file. For example, we use node-article in order to apply a node template to a specific content type. And there's a couple other conditions like this that we can use for node, for page, for block and comment, as well as the other template files. Beyond that, we'll need to create our own logic, but for now, let's go ahead and talk about the naming conventions for the template files. So with our node, we saw the node.tpl.php file, which will be applied across the board for all nodes. But then we renamed it node-article.tpl.php. And the structure here is node and then two dashes separating the base template and the content type. And then if we were going to apply this same structure to a particular node, we could use node -- and then the number of the node ID that we want to override the template for. So the idea here, and this is simply an example, is that when we override template files, if we want to be more specific, there are certain conditions we can engage with in changing the name of our template file, and we do so by separating the components of the name with two dashes. And here's the reason for two dashes. let's take a quick look at another set of template file suggestions for comment wrappers. You see here, this is the base template file for comment wrappers, and there's a single dash between comment and wrapper. That's because this is 2 words, and we want to make sure to delineate between when there are multiple words for a base template and when we're working with a separate condition inside of that file name. So then if we were going to be more specific with this template file name, we would use comment-wrapper, and then 2 dashes, article, the content type name, .tpl.php. So this way it's easier to read for one, and easier to parse out for utilities that need to be able to tell which parts of the template file name are assigned to the base template and which are conditions. 2 more quick tips before we move on to the next videos. I wanted to point out this page on Drupal.org. We are at drupal.org/node/1089656, and this has a list of Drupal 7 template suggestions. And as you scroll down, you'll see that there are suggestions for the block template, comments, comment wrapper. These are in alphabetical order. And you can see the structure where the base template file displays on the left, separated by 2 dashes, and then what conditions can be used within this, and then finally the tpl.php file. And below this, you'll see a few comments talking about how you replace these conditions, for example, or special conditions that you need to meet in order to use this template file. The second thing I wanted to point out was that if you can get a list of all of the tpl.php files on your Drupal site, it can help give you a feel for what is overridable from a template file. I'm going to jump to my terminal screen where I've done a grep search for all files that match the tpl.php extension. And what this does is simply go through the files where I specify them and pull out just those ones that match that structure. So as you scroll down, you could see that we have several under the aggregator module, and then we have a couple under the block module, block.tpl.php, which we'll discuss later, and block admin display form. Of course, if you're not using some of these modules, they may not be that important to you. For example, the ones under book may not be. Comment is typically important, comment.tpl.php. There's a field template file. There's several under forum. And you can go ahead and go through this list if you're curious about what template files there are. Let me scroll down just a little bit so you can see the last couple displayed at the bottom. In our next videos, we're going to look at several examples for overwriting template files, including the page, further explore the node, and also the block template files. And then we'll look at how to deal with complex conditions. Sometimes we need to do something that we can't embed inside of a template file name, and instead need to use some logic around it to decide what template file to use in what situation.